Hey everybody, Daniel here. Welcome to Common Objections to Christianity. We're dealing with part 2 of the question we started last week, can we trust the Bible? Last week we looked at the external evidence such as archaeology and history and how those confirm the Bible as being accurate. Today we're looking at internal evidence as in the Bible itself. Is it trustworthy? Does it contradict itself? So I want to begin by saying the Bible is absolutely unique. Absolutely, there's nothing like it. It was written over 1,500 years by 40 different authors, all different occupations, different places like a prison, a dungeon, a wilderness, over different countries, different languages, dealing with big topics as creation, God, final destiny of humanity, and write about unknown events, and yet they all agree, and there's one common theme throughout it pointing to Jesus. Now that's important because it points to the fact that there seems to be something behind the writing of the Bible. Because if you go out and you ask 10 people who is God, you might get 10 different answers. But this is saying that I'm emphasizing this because you got 40 different people writing who probably didn't know each other. All right, most of them didn't know each other, and yet they all agree on these huge questions. All right, that emphasizing the fact that there seems to be something very unique about the Bible. Now, getting a little bit into details of this, how we can trust what was actually written is trustworthy. The first thing is the criteria of embarrassment. As there's details in the Bible that are considered embarrassing that would not have been added if they wouldn't have put in if they didn't actually take place. As in, when you were writing back then, if you wanted a hero to look great, you would never write a flaw about him. Now, you read throughout the Bible, the flaws of people are very evident. You got David and Bathsheba, you got Peter denying Jesus, the list goes on and on. The reason it's put in is because it actually took place. Now, if you're again trying to make something up, like make up the Bible, you would not have added those in. The fact that they're in there is evidence that these took place, that these are true and accurate and took place. The second thing is that the details are the literacy style is too detailed. C.S. Lewis talks about this, saying modern fictions are nothing like what was written back then. Back then they would not have added details that don't matter, that have nothing to do with the character or the main person, like random details. You wouldn't have added it. It wouldn't make any sense. They didn't write like that. But the Bible does have random details that doesn't matter. Okay, for example, it says they caught 153 fish. Also, it says when Jesus was sleeping on a cushion. And also when Jesus one time talks about how he was writing on the ground. And that's so random, no need for it. It's added because it actually took place. And Timothy Keller summarized like this. He says the only explanation for why an ancient writer would mention the cushion, the 153 fish, the doodling, and the dust is because the details have been retained in the eyewitness memory. All right, as in it actually happened. All right. And so next thing is that historians, how they wrote back then, are not the same now. All right, we write different now. Back then they weren't too worried about writing stuff verbatim. They would get like, okay, this is what took place, and then write it. And you get different perspectives or different details from different people, but you get the same event. All right, they weren't worried about quoting something verbatim as maybe we are today. And so that gets into the question: does the Bible contradict itself? No, there's difference between contradiction and differences. Contradictions are saying basically like, Jesus is God incarnate, Jesus is not God incarnate. Those were contradictions, they both can't be true. The Bible has differences. Differences is not the same at all as contradictions. Let me give you an example. You and me go see a movie, and then we come back, and a week later, we're like telling someone about the movie. Now, we're telling someone something a little different. Do they contradict each other? No, but they're differences, all right? They're from a different perspective, but does it contradict? No, so differences does not contradict each other, all right? That's so important because you'll see that throughout the scripture. There might be slight differences, but that does not at all mean contradictions. And also, Jonathan Morrow points out that there's a difference between broad and precise, all right? Sometimes there's broad details, sometimes there's precise details, but that doesn't mean it contradicts each other. For example, he gives an example of a husband coming home from work, and the wife asking, hey, how was work? And he's like, it's good. Is that inaccurate? No, but it's broad, all right? But there could be more precise details he could have said. Same with scripture. Sometimes there's broad details said, sometimes there's very specific details said. Focus on something. That does not contradict each other, just a different focus, difference of emphasis. And you get into more detail, such as the ones people often bring up is Judas hanging himself. You got two different accounts, like, they contradict each other. It's like, no, they don't. They're just focused on a different detail, all right? Or one of the most common one is, oh, the angels at the tomb. So there's two in one account of the Gospels, there's one in another account. They don't contradict each other because it's not saying there's only one. It's emphasizing the one that's speaking, all right? And so it would contradict each other if it says there's only one and not two angels. But no, it doesn't say that. It says there was one angel that spoke. All right, one angel that's speaking. It's emphasizing the one. All right? There's just different focus, but not at all a contradiction. And so I want to point this out because I like how J. Warner Wallace puts it. J. Wallace used to be cold case detective for many years. He emphasizes if he had four different people, put him in different rooms, and he's interviewing them about a crime that took place, and all of them are basically saying this. They're saying the same thing verbatim. He would conclude, as we would if you've seen any crime show, that they met together beforehand, they conspired and made this up. All right, they're covering something up. But that's not what we have with the Gospels. All right. Now, if you have all four of those people also saying different details, differences what they're saying, but the same event that took place, you'd be like, okay, this is actually what took place. That's what happened with the Gospels. There's differences, but they're recording the exact same events. There's different focuses at some point. Some are more precise, some are more broad, but that does not contradict each other at all. And so I want to end with this quote. I love this quote. It says this by a guy who's basically been studying this stuff for many, many years with textual criticism, alleged contradictions in the Bible. He says this: as I've dealt with the apparent discrepancies one after another, and I've studied the alleged contradictions between the biblical record and the evidence of linguistics, archaeology, or science, my confidence in the trustworthiness of Scripture has repeatedly verified and strengthened. So he's saying it has become stronger because the Bible does not contradict itself and it is trustworthy. So I want to end with this. The Bible is unique. There's one of a kind. There's nothing like it, and it is historically accurate, archaeologically accurate, and it within itself is trustworthy, recording the actual events that took place. That's why you can trust the Bible. All right, I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll see you next time.